Chapter 3, Section 9 is the Pythagorean Theorem. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to use the Pythagorean Theorem to solve problems, and then use the Pythagorean Theorem to determine if a triangle is a right triangle. So a leg, when you have two sides of a right triangle, they're the ones that form the right angle, where the hypotenuse is the longest side, and that is opposite of the right angle. And then converse of a conditional statement. So a conditional statement is an if-then statement. So if I go to the mall, then I'm going to spend a lot of money. If I drive my car too fast, then I'm going to get a ticket, those kind of things. The converse is when you switch the if and the then around. So if I have a statement like, if I go to the mall, then I'm going to spend lots of money, the converse would be, if I spend lots of money, then I went to the mall. So for your examples, I gave you a conditional statement. You need to write the converse for it. So solving problems, we have this right triangle here, and we have the two legs. They make the right angle, and then your hypotenuse is the longest side, and it's always opposite the right angle, like we had just said. The Pythagorean theorem describes the relationships between the lengths of the sides of a right triangle, and it's important to keep in mind that the Pythagorean theorem only works for right triangles. And it says that if you take the length A and square it, the length B and square it, you get the length of C squared. And remember, we had proved something with what we had done in 8th grade, where however long this is, you made a square off the end of it, and then however long this is, you make a square off of the end of this. And if you add this is B squared and A squared up, you would end up with this nice crooked square here, which is C squared. And that's why we made all those crooked squares in that book, was to get to that formula. So this year we're just going to actually use the formula. So what's the length of the hypotenuse of the triangle at the right? So we have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A and B are always your legs, and this is always your hypotenuse. So they give us two legs. So we can name one A and name one B. So we're going to plug in 9 squared plus 12 squared. And it doesn't matter which one you plug in because addition is commutative. So this gives me 81, this gives me 144. And when you add those up, you end up with 225 equals C squared. Now to get C by itself, we're going to use what we did yesterday, and we're going to take the square root of both sides. So if you take the square root of 225, you get a nice pretty 15. Next problem, use the figure at the right. How many miles is it from downtown to the harbor? So we're trying to figure out this distance right here. Now the difference with this problem is they give us one leg and they give us the hypotenuse. So we can call this A, but this is always C. So we're looking for B, and they so graciously gave us the value down there. So for A squared plus B squared equals C squared, we're going to plug in 4 for the A. We're trying to find B, and we know C is 8. So we have 16 equals B squared, or 16 plus B squared equals 64. We got to subtract 16 from both sides. So we end up with B squared equals 48. And then take the square root. And this is not a perfect square, so we're going to get kind of an icky number here. But we know it's got to be really close to 7, because 49 is a perfect square. So we actually get 6.9. So this is about 6.9 miles. So here's where that converse comes into play. The converse of the Pythagorean theorem says that if a triangle fits A squared plus B squared equals C squared, then it has to be a right triangle and your hypotenuse has to be C. So if I just give you random lengths, you can figure out if it would form a right triangle. They would form any type of triangle, like 5, 12, and 13. We can see that it doesn't matter, you can make a triangle out of it, but it might not be a right triangle. You might get a funny looking triangle, like one of these, that doesn't have a right angle. So all of these will form triangles, but we want to test and see if they're right triangles. So the thing you have to remember is that your hypotenuse is always the longest. So what we're testing here is we're trying to see if we take 5 squared plus 12 squared, will it give us 13 squared? And if it does, then those sides would form a right triangle. So 5 squared is 25, 12 squared is 144, and 13 squared is 169. And if you add up 25 and 44, you get 169. So that means that all of these lengths right here would definitely add up to making a right triangle. Now the next one, 7 squared plus 9 squared, does that give us 12 squared? So 7 squared is 49, 9 squared is 81, and we know 12 squared is 144. And if you add up 49 and 81, you get something close, but you get 130. So that means that this is not a right triangle. It would form some sort of triangle, but you wouldn't have a 90-degree angle. So, can you use the Pythagorean theorem? I gave you A and B and then A and C, so be careful what you're solving for. And then you're trying to do the same thing that I just did. Is that a right triangle or not? Make sure you write down any questions you have and we can go over them in class tomorrow. Have a good night.